just by coincidence, a friend of mine was already studying Liverpool, and he said, listen, there is this science and football program. So you learn science in football, and the links with the clubs like Everton, Liverpool, Southport, Tranmere, all the clubs around the Liverpool area were very close to John Moores University. Literally from the moment I arrived, I thought, this is where I want to be. Because for Tableau, they offer a student license. For free, you could just access Tableau for a year, and you can just play around. They have free data sets and everything. And I jumped in, but I had one issue. And the issue was there was no videos, there was no content, nothing for sport. It was all economies, weather data, Boeing takeoffs and landing in the US. Like there was nothing that could help me just go straight to work, learn exactly what I need to do. I still haven't seen anywhere you can actually educate yourself specifically on Tableau or Power BI for sport or as a sports scientist. And we thought, you know what, why don't we create one place, one resource, so people who are in sports, who are super busy, who don't have time to look at the 747 takeoff times to calculate the acute chronic workload ratio, and just literally just want to have their session report, the periodization, the weekly report, benchmarking for data, for games. They just want to be up and running today.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Working in Sport podcast. My name is James Grigson. Today's guest, all the way from Norway, is Johannes Marthinussen. Johannes is the Football and Data Insights Lead at Football Norway. On today's show, we talk about his journey growing up in Norway, loving football, loving data, his move over to the UK to study in Liverpool and to study data in football, his numerous roles across football and sport, his roles in football as a referee, performance analyst, sports scientist, data analyst, you name it. This man, all things data, all things football, and all things sport as well. Johannes is a very well-travelled man, growing up in Norway, spent some time in the UK as we mentioned, but also spent about 2 years in Qatar there at the Aspire Academy. A man with a wealth of knowledge and a man that stepped into the entrepreneurial lane with Sport Horizon. It was a very well-rounded chat, all things sport, all things data, all things entrepreneurship in sport. I really hope you enjoy it. Today's show is brought to you by JTG Media. JTG Media are business growth specialists. If you're looking to increase your sales and marketing for your business, JTG Media can help. That's jtgmedia.org, business growth specialists. Let's get on with the show.
Well, one of the first questions I actually had for you was about the sports science scene in Norway. So during your time, you've gone and you've worked across Norway, but then also in the UK. Your background, first in the world of sport was as a referee in Norway. But I want to know, as someone who has been in the UK, but then also across to the Middle East, but then worked in Norway, what's the scene like in Norway for sports scientists?
If I'm brutally honest, I believe we're quite far behind. I guess the first time I really got in touch with it was in 2015, when I was very fortunate. He's actually my boss today. But I worked with him for the first time in a summer internship in, I believe, when was it? 2015, maybe. It was just before I was going to start a uni in Liverpool. I dropped in an email because I was playing football with him before. He was the academy director. So I dropped him an email and said, listen, I'm going to uni in Liverpool to study football. I want a little bit of experience. Can I do anything for free for you this summer? Anything, 3 months, I'm available anytime. And he just said, really exciting, come on board. I will give you a little bit of money and you can work with me for 3 months. And that was the first time I was inside a club in Norway. And this club is very successful now. They are in the conference league. They're playing really, really well. But obviously this was now 8 years ago. And there was no GPS. There was no well-being. There was literally nothing what you sort of associate with sports science today. And obviously then I went off to England and it was completely different. I was straight away introduced to collecting all the GPS data, the urine testing, the well-being, gym sessions, everything. But what happened in Norway and where we're sort of going now is that in 2016, they introduced like a classification system where in Norway you get money if you start to do these type of things, amongst lots of other things. So similar to the EPPP in the UK.
Yeah.
So Norway is definitely moving forward. There is a lot of data collection. I guess the main thing in Norway now is to really start to take advantage of this data, because what we see is that it's collected all different types of data, but there's not enough resources at the moment to actually handle this data, to clean it, to manipulate it, and to answer the really good questions. So definitely moving forward, but no, far behind, both from the Aspire here in Qatar and UK and everywhere. Yeah.
I was very interested to hear the answer to that question, because you've had some time in Norway, and then you've gone to the UK, but then you've also come back to Norway, and then obviously spent some time in the Middle East as well, and you've seen the progression of Norwegian sports science and the data around that. What was the catalyst for you to move to the UK? Was it to chase sports science, or were there some other reasons there why you wanted to get to the UK?
I was first studying actually like a similar sports science degree in Norway, in the Norwegian School of Sports Sciences, but it was sports biology. And the thing about Norway, we are very, very good in winter sports and endurance sports. So at this school, it's literally next to the Olympic Committee, where they have all the skiing, the long distance runner, the Ingebrigtsen brothers, all this. So the school is sort of colored by the fact that endurance sport is very popular. So everything of the material was very running based. It was very close to cross-country skiing, all these types of activities, and very little links to football. So the collaboration with clubs and everything was very poor. And just by coincidence, a friend of mine was already studying Liverpool, and he said, listen, there is this science and football program. So you learn science in football, and the links with the clubs like Everton, Liverpool, Southport, Tranmere, all the clubs around the Liverpool area were very close to John Moores University. So he invited me over and said, listen, just have a chat with these guys, see what you think. And literally from the moment I arrived, I thought, this is where I want to be. So I left Norway straight away, and I went to start in Liverpool because I wanted to be a lot more sports specific, football specific, and also to have the opportunity to go for these internships and get some hands-on experience. So I guess just a combination of more specific to football and the very, very good links that John Moores had with clubs made the decision really easy, to be honest.
You mentioned the internship that you first got as a foot in the door into football in Norway, but then of course through your CV I see some other internships happening in the UK. Just to jump back a little bit, you mentioned that there wasn't much typical sports science. I say typical sports science data collection in Norway for your first gig. What were you doing, and how did that differ to the stuff that you were doing with the clubs in the UK? But then also, like, can you talk through maybe some of the lessons that you learned in a different environment, like in the lesser data heavy Norwegian football scene in 2015, 2016, that you're still able to use and take forth and implement at the more data heavy organizations like Burnley and Everton and places that you worked?
I guess my main benefit from my very, very first internship in this local club in Bodø was actually Excel, because it didn't ask me to look at any GPS data or any like sports science related data in Excel, but he asked me literally to just plot some activities from a Champions League final. He asked me to have a look at the game cycles of local clubs in Norway. So literally just plotting Excel data. Can we create a new series, a local structure for the under 14, 15, 16? So I was plotting dates, I was plotting games, predicting, okay, but can we play this game if this team's play then and this one? So I think maybe the Excel was the main benefit I had from this internship. Obviously, alongside meeting lots of different people, you get introduced to being like feeling the environment of being in the club. But obviously as well, I was a coach in a football school. You were collecting bibs, you were literally cleaning, you were clipping simple videos in iMovie, like you were doing everything, videoing a game. Like it was not the typical sports science internship. It was like we got a slave for, not a slave, but you got free work. Let's put it what it is. It was a voluntarily free work from my side. So, and then you take what you get. And I was super happy. It was so exciting. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And if I was there again, I would do it every day of the week. It was very, very useful.
Mate, at that stage, so 2015, 2016, you hadn't yet gone over to the UK, but you mentioned that a lot of your work at the internship at that first club in Norway was very Excel heavy. Where did you, like, was this just self-taught skills? Like you speak with it like, yeah, a lot of enthusiasm and passion. Were you always into data? Was this always something that you thought you'd want to do within football?
No, not really. No, I wasn't particularly good in maths at school. I chose the easy path, like the practical. We had like a difficult path and the easy path. I chose the easy path. But I guess it was just when he asked me to do these things in Excel, like you played around a little bit, you found that, oh, but you can do that as well. Sorry. And you sort of just, but you start to know a little bit, and the people realize, but Johannes, how did you do that in Excel? And you maybe see someone else who did like one part of a thing in Excel, and then I thought, but how do you even do that? So I think it was just the opportunity to show that you can bring some value by being good in Excel this summer. The curiosity that I saw other people who were good in Excel, that I can learn from them. And I guess that's since that day, I've just kept going with this data, because it's sort of been like a dual journey where we have this sort of physiology with the biology, GPS data, physical performance, but always very linked with data. And that's sort of where it's gone over time. So I think they've always been closely linked for me. And yes, I was definitely enthusiastic and still am enthusiastic about Excel.
The love of data certainly shines through in the other experiences that you took on, of course, a role over at the Aspire Academy, and then the role that you're in now across the Norwegian Football Association there. But I want to talk about the company that you co-found, Sport Horizon. So, you're dealing with data, not just physical performance data. That, as you mentioned, there are some other elements to Sport Horizon. And I'd love you, in your own words, actually just to speak a little bit about what you're doing with Sport Horizon, but also, the catalyst for that, like why it's a very entrepreneurial thing to do, and yourself and Kieran have done a great job of marketing what you're doing. But I'd love to know a little bit more about like why you guys started it. I'm assuming it's off the love of data, like as you've just explained, but then also, what you're providing to these clubs and organizations.
I guess that the sort of idea to start it wasn't something just arrived overnight. I guess it was just like a hunch, if you could say, and that started many years ago when I actually first entered into this myself, because it was I think it was 2017 when Nick Coleman in Everton for the very first time introduced me to Tableau. And I was previously, like we spoke about, like I absolutely loved Excel, but Excel has some limitations. And when the first time he introduced me to Tableau, I thought, oh, wow, this is awesome. I need to bring this to Norway at one day, because in Norway, we are so far behind on this. So this is definitely something we need to do in Norway. And I just went home. I got myself a student license. And because for Tableau, they offer a student license for free. You could just access Tableau for a year and you can just play around. They have free data sets and everything. So I asked Nick, can you give me a mock data set and I can play around? And I jumped in, but I had one issue. And the issue was there was no videos, there was no content, nothing for sport. All the content from Tableau, not all, but it was very few videos and articles and reports that was on football or sport in general. It was a little bit on basketball, but in general, it was all economies, weather data, Boeing takeoffs and landing in the US. Like there was nothing that could help me just go straight to work, learn exactly what I need to do to build this in any club or organizations to provide assistance today. So instead, I had to go like this super long journey of looking at Boeing 747 takeoffs times and take calculations from there. I had to take a little bit from the weather forecast to change the dates. Like there was like a host of different places I collected resources to understand how can I create this acute chronic workload ratio, which was super hot at that time. And I really just wanted to create this one. And I spent a week to understand how can I just do this simple formula. And over time, I've obviously just learned a lot in this, but I still haven't seen anywhere you can actually educate yourself specifically on Tableau or Power BI for sport or as a sports scientist. And then by coincidence, I met Kieran on a conference in Portugal a year and a half ago. And he was saying, but Johannes, why don't we take a beer? This sounds very, very interesting, because I've been thinking this myself, because we just started chatting like a coincidence. And our chats really continued, obviously, throughout the conference and in the weeks after. And we thought, you know what, why don't we create one place, one resource, so people who are in sports, who are super busy, who don't have time to look at the 747 takeoff times to calculate acute chronic workload ratio, and just literally just want to have their session report, the periodization, the weekly report, benchmarking for data, for games. They just want to be up and running today. They don't have time. The pre-season is already running. I need to fix it today. We thought, let's create a course to take them step by step. If you know nothing about Power BI or Tableau, we take you step by step from the very first Excel sheet until you have 5-6 different reports, automated workflow, plug and play, and you can do it like in one evening. If you have a long evening, 4 or 5 hours, you will be up and running in 4 or 5 hours. That's what we wanted to create, to help the practitioners stop to waste all their time looking at resources that is not specific to them. And that's why we created both a course for Power BI and Tableau for sports scientists. And now we are also doing another level for Power BI, because it's a very high demand to go even deeper into DAX and M language and data modeling and all other things. So it's been a very, very interesting journey, and it's super exciting.
And mate, where can people find out more about that?
What's that? Sorry?
Where can the people find more about Sport Horizon? Just on your LinkedIn?
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is a good place. I'm not good on Twitter. I gotta admit, I love data and all these things, but social media is not my biggest skills. But Kieran is good on Twitter, so follow Kieran on Twitter as well as Sport Horizon, and sporthorizon.co.uk as well. We have lots of free resources, because we want also to, not for only the people who have a little bit of money, because it's quite cheap, but for those who just want a little bit of CPD, who want some inspiration. We have lots of free content, and we are planning to do a lot more free content so everyone can access and upskill in this area. So have a look there, and you can sign up for free, and you will get loads of free data and free workbooks to play around with.
Yeah, I love seeing what you and Kieran have done so far. I understand you're getting a lot of interest, and I hope it continues. What are some of the common mistakes that you see organizations make with their data, whether it's their data, their processing, or their formatting, or their visualizations, or even just the ideas they have about their data? And I guess the reason I'm asking this selfishly as well, but are those obviously you're dealing with organizations that are, very well sophisticated, or they have budgets to reflect that they should be very, very well sophisticated. And then you're obviously dealing with some organizations that aren't as sophisticated or aren't as well resourced. And I wonder, are there problems, is it big data, bigger problems, or is it, and then small data, smaller problems, or are a lot of the problems the same between, your larger organizations and your smaller organizations?
First, I think we all have some challenges. I would prefer to call them challenges rather than problems. And we also have in the federation, we have challenges in Sport Horizon. Like, there is challenges everywhere. But I guess if you approach it as a challenge, that's a nice start, or at least I like to think of it as, because at least that can be solved.
Yep.
And the types of challenges you see in the various organizations obviously depends, because if in the bigger organizations, you might have a challenge with which provider should I choose? Like, there are so many providers and so many new technologies out there. My challenge is, which one should I pick? Which one should I have to try to have at least a little bit of consistency with this provider? And for the smaller club is maybe, do we even have a choice between any providers? What could we even do for free? Can we even do anything for free? I guess one of the things I found is that a lot of the clubs don't start with a strategy. Like, what is actually the problem you want to solve? What are the answers you actually are looking for? And then go and look for, what do we need to actually solve this problem? rather than, okay, there is a new piece of kit, I would love to try that out, and then that wasn't really solving my problem, and then you go to another one. So maybe just take a step back sometimes, establish a strategy for your club and your organization, and understand which problems you're trying to solve, and then sort of take it from there instead. Also, I find that a lot of organizations work very much in silos. It's incredible. You can have completely different systems in the performance analysis unit. Then you have a physiology unit who has a completely different system. And then you have the nutrition unit, who have the third one. And at the end, no one is speaking to each other. Or maybe some have the same, but they don't even know that they're having the same. So I think communication is definitely one big one I see is lacking or not good enough in many organizations. And sure, we as well, we definitely need to improve our communication as well.
Yeah, it's certainly something that I saw during my time in the athlete management space as well. And I wanted to get your thoughts on, you were saying before that some of the organizations haven't quite done the work enough to understand what problem they're trying to solve. But also I found, and I wanted to get your thoughts on this, they might know that they have a problem, but they may be misdiagnosing a problem with a symptom, like, oh, I have a sore back, but really your problem is that you need stronger glutes, to use an anatomy example here. Do you find that some people misdiagnose what their problem actually is, or do you think that organizations are well aware with what their problem is? I was curious to know whether some people come to you and they say, oh, we have this symptom, but you may help them in finding actually what is their root problem.
Yeah, and just to add on that, I think also some people are definitely aware of their challenges.
Yeah.
But there is, for various reasons, maybe it could be a cultural thing that you want to stick with what you have. There could be relational, that you have a good relationship with this one, and I've been working with him for 10 years, so I want to continue with this provider or in this way of working. So what do you call it? Like a restriction to, or a ability to not move forward or change. I find many people struggle with. And it was also a big challenge when I came into the federation in Norway as well, is that here we had a lot of data, like huge amounts. And it was like, I'm comfortable in Excel. I like to have my reports in the PDF, or I like even to print my report. I prefer a printed Excel table rather than a interactive Tableau report that is live, that you could press refresh and you have everything ready. Like we had, for example, like a player dashboard we wanted to create for the national team coaches. So imagine you're a under 15s coach, you have 50 players on your squad list, and they play twice per week, once per week, whatever. But you want to pick players who play. You don't want to pick the players who didn't play the last 4 months, or it could be under 21s, for that sake. It doesn't matter. But some coaches have for 10 years, they've been written every Sunday evening. They sit on their notepad or in their written book, and they write every single player, how many minutes, which game, opponent, score, everything. And they spend hours every Sunday to do this. And they were super happy. But I said, yeah, but we can do this. You don't have to do this. You can do this instead. We have Tableau, for example. And just that challenge to introducing something new, that you are aware that you spend a lot of hours, you are aware that this is much more efficient, but you are just reluctant to actually take that change. And I guess this is also a challenge that many organizations might be facing with coaches who might have a preferred way of working.
Yeah, certainly. I can relate to that barrier during my time in data as well. But what I'm really, I ask every guest this question, but I'm very much interested in your answer to this, because you've worked across football and sport in Norway, the UK, in Qatar, but you've also been a referee, you've been a sports scientist, you've been a data scientist, you've been a performance analyst, so you've held multiple roles in sport across multiple continents. And you're also now in an entrepreneurial space in sport as well. So I'm really curious to answer this question. Someone that's starting out in sport today, working in sport, whether it's across those various roles that we just talked about or anything else that you can think of, what's your number one piece of advice to those people that are starting out in sport today?
Wow. I would say, because I've been thinking about it sometimes, what would I do if I go back to John Morris again? Would I do something differently, or would I do like which path would I actually take? And I think one thing I come back to is be incredibly good with the basics. And with the basics, I mean, be on time every single time, communicate very well. If you know you're late, tell the people, sorry, I'm late. Dress well, be polite, hold the door, clean your stuff. Like, do all the basics that you would take for granted. But it just keeps surprising me, having worked in different organizations, now employing people, like how few people do the basics very, very good. And at the end, who actually wants to work with the guy who don't smell too good, he don't dress well, his hair is all over the place, he just woke up, he's a little bit late. Like, you don't really want to work or teach someone. So if you're coming into an organization as a sports scientist, but you are curious, you are on time, you're willing to learn, like you are just generally happy to be there and want to contribute, that's the person a mentor or anyone with experience at the club would like to help. The guy who show up late, doesn't behave too bad, he's not super polite, he's not humble, that's not the type of person a mentor in a club would like to take care of. So I guess just doing the basics really well. I actually wrote a LinkedIn post on it a few weeks ago where I tagged my mentor at the time in Everton, who's John Noonan. He's now also self-employed, works in Formula One amongst many other athletes. And I just tagged him and say, one of the reasons I made your coffee every single morning, because I always took the early bus. So I arrived early in Everton to have the coffee ready for the people to arrive, because then I felt like it's a nice thing to do. And also I feel like I have the freedom to ask him a question in return. So John, here is your coffee. Now I have one question for you about breathing. And just doing like super basic things like that, I found people underestimate the power of. So yeah, long answer, but I guess the good thing, the number one thing I would recommend is do the basics very, very good.
I love that answer, mate. Thank you for sharing that. For those that want to catch more on Johannes's work with Sport Horizon, sporthorizon.co.uk. Obviously on LinkedIn, Johannes, you'll see the links all below, as well as Kieran's Twitter. Also, Johannes, thank you very much for coming on. It's midday over where you are, and it's 6 p.m. where I'm at, but I really appreciate you coming on. For those that are watching, they want to watch more, you can see the latest interview from the Working Sport podcast up here. You can subscribe down here for Johannes and myself. Thank you and have a great day.